I'm Glenn Ford, and this is LearningCreator.com's second seminar in the series on how to select a writing system. Now, today's seminar is going to be on what characteristics of your writing are important when selecting your system. And for this, we're going to create a bit of a on-screen editing here and show you a framework. Et voila, we have our screen here that we can work with. Our framework begins by looking at whether or not the writing you're going to do is time-based or fact-based. That is time an integral part of the story you're putting down? We'll call it a story for the moment. The other alternative is that it's fact-based, that it's really just an organization of facts which are occurring in whatever order you want them to occur. I'll explain a little bit closer as I give you a real example a little later. The second piece of our structure is whether or not the writing you're doing is structured or unstructured. Sometimes the writing you're doing will be very tightly structured according to either a time-based or a fact-based, or it may be less structured. The next one is whether or not it's a complex piece of writing or a simple piece of writing. Basically what you're looking at is how big the piece of writing you're doing, how many different pieces you're bringing in, whether it's very straightforward or whether it's complicated. Okay, so that's how you decide simple and complex. Now that will affect it mostly on whether or not you need to worry about the structure or unstructured. It just gives you a little bit more flexibility if it's simple, whereas it really limits you if you're complex. Now I'm going to get rid of that one, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to examine time, fact-based versus structured, unstructured, and give you some more examples so that you can understand it a little bit closer, because I think simple complex is fairly easy to understand. What do we mean by a time-based structured type of writing? Well, the answer is that we're looking at something that is timeline focused. That is, it concentrates on this happened, and this happened, and this happened, and this happened, and that there is a time delay, a time element to it. We find that primarily in things like fiction, in history, and in biographies, and that includes autobiographies. Now the other structured type that fits in this corner is an argument focused. Those are our standard books that we see on the shelves in the how-to section and in the why-to sections, basically in the business reference sections. It's a how-to or a why-to. And the point of this is that it is creating an argument to try to convince people to do something or to believe something or to accept something and so on. It's putting forward an argument, trying to convince someone else to believe it. Now in the area of the unstructured, we have a time-based unstructured to begin with, and those are the things that are sequential in order. So if we're talking about a manual how-to, that is the details in the how-to. I want you to do this, and then I want you to do this, and then if this happens you need to do that, and if this happens then do that, etc., etc. Recipes are a great example of this. Now there's a little trick here. The best way to show sequential information is actually with a diagram, not verbal. If I get over into the other area in the fact-based, we look at the same thing with collections. So 7 best of, 3 best of, the 100 best of. We also get into it with recipes, with the overall, where we're bringing together a whole bunch of different recipes and saying, I've got a whole bunch of recipes and this is my book. So whenever you're collecting things together, that's an example of a fact-based, unstructured. Now here's the kicker. With these, they're both oriented towards smaller groups, although collections by definition isn't. And as a result, they need to adopt one of these two structures, because they have to be put into structure or your reader's not going to consider it to be useful. They're just not going to accept what they're reading. So, for example, a recipe. Recipes are, by nature, simply a sequential order of steps. So each recipe I have to create in a sequential order. But then I've got to do something with them. I've got a whole bunch of them here. I've got, in effect, a collection. Now, I can just put them one after another in alphabetical order, okay, but I've still applied a structure. Or I could put them together in terms of the materials that are in them. I can turn it around and do it in terms of whether it's a lunch or a dinner or a dessert. But each of those is adding a structure to it. So essentially, when I'm getting into a sequential, there's no real structure to it beyond what's happening at the lowest level. So I automatically will need to put it into something else. In a collection, I've got to assign some form of structure to it. Now, that doesn't necessarily have to be one of these two structures, but most likely it will end up as being an argument focused or something along those lines. Okay, we'll do a bit of a quick fancy-dancy edit here, and back to me. Okay, so there you have it. That's the basic concept behind a framework that describes your writing and identifies what your requirements are going to be. So I hope you enjoyed today's seminar. I'm Glenn Ford. Don't forget our next seminar, which is looking at the actual systems that are out there. And then the seminar after that, we will match the two together and show you how to select the system that's best for you. So, learn and earn. Glad to have you with us.